Okay, I'm going live.
Are we live?
I think so. If we weren't live before, we are now.
All right.
Matt, can you handle the social media posts?
I can indeed. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Praxichat. My name is Matt with the Praxeum, also known as Darth Matu. And with me today we have Liisa.
Hi, I'm Darth Liisa, or Liisa Mountain, and I host the show Legends Library, and I'm also on the board of directors for the Jedi Conclave.
And then we got Kyle with us, same as last week.
I'm just a dude who's on the board.
And then joining us this week to talk about Mandalorians in Legends is Tad Larkin.
Hey everybody, I'm Tad Larkin. I host the YouTube channel Manda-LORE, where I talk about Star Wars Expanded Universe material. Yeah, I play Legends games sometimes too, but yeah.
You started a podcast recently too, didn't you? Oyabot?
Yeah, it was originally with Sombraptor and then, Bluefire 911. Excuse me, I'm sorry. I'm getting feedback and I can't.
So am I. Is someone watching? You should mute the sound. There you go. Sorry about that. What were you saying,
Yeah,
Tom?
sorry about that.
Sorry, I was hearing myself and then getting distracted. So originally we started with Bluefire 191 and who did the Earth and Star Wars series. And then Sombraptor, but Bluefire moved to England and has had internet issues, and also just trying to schedule a podcast with him is a nightmare. So we're kind of doing that until he's able to come back. It's like our own little side project.
Nice.
And-
Well, I've seen a couple episodes. It seems like it's been going well so far.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. So before we really get into it, I just wanted to double tap with everybody that we are still moving forward with the Praxeum. The conclave is still being planned. At the moment, there's not much to update you on. We are about to finalize our bylaws, and once we do, we will make sure to make them public for scrutiny. Transparency is going to be a real big thing for us going forward, just so that you guys know that this is Star Wars fans taking care of Star Wars. But yeah, since there's not really much to talk about with that, we're just going to roll right into it. We're going to talk about the Mandalorians this week in Legends, and I guess we'll start right at the beginning. So Tad, I guess a lot of people don't know this, but the Mandalorians are originally from Coruscant.
Yeah, it used to be called Neutron. Then when humans kind of took over, they renamed it Coruscant over time. And I don't know if anybody here is familiar with Joe Bongiorno and his supernatural encounters. Yeah,
Joe.
I read one of the earlier editions of his work, and it's kind of brilliant how he ties everything together, and kind of explains the where humans actually come from in the Star Wars galaxy. But
Yeah, I read that as well. He actually has an extended edition coming out here soon that is going to add even more to it.
yeah, and I'm excited for that. I've been hearing about that one for a while.
Yeah, me too.
But,
He released the table of contents. It was like 70 chapters.
Yeah, Gee, I think the longest edition he had was like 16 chapters or something. That's the one I read for one of my videos.
Yeah, and he's pretty much turned it into like a full novel at this point.
It's beyond a novel at this point, I'd say.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I'm very excited about it.
At this point, it's closer to a Bible.
Like an encyclopedia.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, for real.
It's
And I mean, it is.
Star Wars, that's what it is.
That's a good comparison, honestly.
Right. Oh, except the Silmarillion I find a bit harder to read, but anyway.
Yeah, Joe's a good writer.
For sure.
Yeah.
Right.
And plus, Eldritch Beans tormenting an archaeologist in the Star Wars universe is just like one of the craziest things ever.
Hmm.
But yeah,
And-
so they were from Coruscant originally. I know that them and humans fought a lot.
Yeah,
Um,
so there was a big war with the 13 nations of Zel, which is what the humans called themselves at that point. And basically, the Celestials got involved too, and they made like big volcanic eruptions and earthquakes, and eventually, like the Tong decided they were defeated, so they screwed off basically,
They bailed.
and then spent a couple centuries looking for places to conquer. They actually one of the planets in Droids, the old Droids cartoon series, they had conquered before they even reached Mandalore. But yeah, sometime before 7000 BBY is when we finally get them coming to Mandalore itself.
And they got expelled from the planet, right?
Yeah, pretty much humans they fought them off to not necessarily extinction, but drove them from the planet.
Wild, man. It's like one of those corners of the Star Wars universe that just does not get explored as often as it should.
The pre-Republic era is woefully underexplored.
It really is. That's for sure. But yeah, so I know, Lisa, you had a lot about this. Did you have anything that you wanted to add to the Zell? I don't know.
No.
I'll be honest. Like, I know so little about that era. I know that it happened and like the general history of it, but besides that, it's so little explored. It's hard for me to talk about it.
I mean, there's not too much other than what has Abel Pina has put in. But yeah, no, he definitely covered everything right there. But they went to Rune first, and then they went to Mandalore.
Mm-hmm.
I will say that the Tong look cool as hell, and they continue this proud Star Wars tradition of awesome aliens.
They're very inspired by the Predator, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. They even had
Yeah,
like
for sure.
the dreadlock thing going on.
Mm-hmm.
If you could compare them to any cultures, who do you think you would find them most like?
So I did a video on this a couple months back. It wasn't actually very well received. I had got some historical things incorrect, mostly with the Celts. But Karen Travis suggests that she based a lot of the Mandalorian culture on Irish and Scottish Celtic
Yeah, I see.
traditions. Yeah.
Like the clan stuff, especially.
But I see a lot of influence with the Mongols as well as
That's what I would see too.
yeah, because there's these warrior nomads, the Tartars, a lot of those East Asian steppe nomadic culture tribes.
Yeah.
Almost like a composite, like civilized barbarian, almost. Or like
Yeah.
kind of like that. Or like honorable barbarian, something like that.
Yeah.
While
Makes
they're
sense for the way the Mandalorians behave too. Like they
Mhm.
pretty much just conquer everything around them.
I find like sometimes they do remind me of Finnish people as well, since that's my background. But they actually did take a word from Finland and put it into Star Wars. If you guys are, the planet Kalevala, or they say it in Clone Wars Kalevala, but it's Kalevala. That's a Finnish epic poem. Has been going around for like hundreds and hundreds of years that Tolkien was influenced by, and then created Gandalf, the character. So like, I don't know if they took it from that per se, but like it definitely has its influence in there.
What is that from? That planet?
It's in Mandalore. It's the one. It's number 4, planet number 4.
Really? So what are the planets in the Mandalore system? I don't even know what they all are.
There's
I'd
the
have
moon
to.
Concordia.
Yeah.
I
So,
knew
about
Actually,
Concordia.
so you got Concordia, Mandalore, Kalevala, and I blank on the other ones. I'd have to Google that, but
Bet your Tad knows.
So
That's
I
where-
actually made a map of the Mandalore sector, inspired very much by the New Essential Atlas.
I love the new
And-
Central Atlas.
I'm sharing it in the chat right now if you guys want to see. I had it on the Mandalore Discord for a while.
But yeah, Kalevala, that's where Satine Kryz was born.
Oh, that's cool.
It doesn't have every single system, but I had gotten the
Oh yeah, that's nice.
major ones. Yeah.
That's cool.
It's crazy they're right off the Hydian Way there. You can tell how they spread out so quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for people that maybe aren't as familiar with the, I guess the word would be geography of the Star Wars galaxy, there's only a few major hyperlanes that kind of run through the galaxy, and the Hydian Way is one of the big ones. It kind of goes to like the top right-hand corner of the Star Wars galaxy out to the edge. They use that. I was gonna say, I was literally just about to say, Terrace is right off of it, but you have it in the
Yeah.
picture. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was I know during the Old Republic when the Mandalorian Wars started, Terrace falling was like the moment when the Republic started freaking out.
Yeah, so I don't know if we want to jump to the Mandalorian Wars, but when that conflict first started, because there was the outlying conflict where it was Mandalore the Ultimate conquering backwater systems, basically just kind of poking at the Republic to test their strength. It wasn't until like he actually struck at the heart of the Republic in the Outer Rim that they're like, okay, something's going on here. We need to retaliate.
So you said that might not necessarily want to jump on. What I guess let's go after they get to Mandalore. I'm not very familiar with those very early days. Like my Mandalorian knowledge really starts hardcore with Exar Kun and Tales of the Jedi.
Okay.
Well, it's not really explained a lot. Like we don't even really have a specific date for when they did arrive at Mandalore. We know that they just arrived there sometime prior to 7000 BBY. And then they hunted the mythosaurs, which are these giant dragon reptilian beasts, to extinction.
And that's the symbol, right? That's really
Yeah.
famous.
Yeah.
The mythosaur skull.
Yeah, that's cool. Didn't they ride them?
Um,
They had other dragons that they rode. They weren't the mythosaurs.
I
yeah,
thought
they had the
rode
basilisk
something.
war droids that
Yeah,
they
those
rode.
things.
Well,
I thought the reason that they rode the basilisks was because way long before that they rode something else.
They rode the Lagertoas war dragons. That's what they rode.
That's what it was. Basilisks are one of the coolest things in the Star Wars universe. Now,
I've
I
been
mean,
to Toy Story. I love the basilisk droids. They're
oh,
so
they're
awesome.
so cool. Yeah, they're so cool.
They actually went and took them from a different culture. They didn't develop them themselves.
Yeah,
They took them from a culture that they conquered.
The planet was called Basilisk, right? Isn't that
Yeah,
why it's
hence-
called
yeah.
Basilisk Warlords?
yeah.
Yeah.
And the dragons were from there as well. So they like took the dragons and then the droids. They're like, we got both now.
Mm-hmm.
Those droids are so cool. For
It's a bit
people
like
that
the
don't
Roman
know,
Empire, because like they take over like a culture or a planet or a group, then like adapt some of it into like their broader culture, kind of.
well, that goes back
Yeah.
to what Tad was saying about the Mongolians, because that was something that they were really good at too. You know, like they conquered China and they adapted a lot of that culture and technology and then used it to become more effective. You know, like that was a big part of the reason why they surged west in the first place. And you kind of see the same thing happening with the Mandalorians, like the taking of the Basilisk. I guess in real life, when the Mongols took China, it was a big deal because they got access to like siege equipment, you know, like trebuchets and things like that, so they could take walled cities now. And then in Star Wars, I think they took Basilisk right before the Mandalorian Wars, right? A few years before that. Wasn't that one of those like brush fire conflicts that you mentioned that Mandalore the Ultimate was
It was
involved in?
before the Great Sith War, actually.
Oh,
4,000
dang.
4,000 BBY. Yeah.
Because Mandalore the Indomitable had them when he was fighting for Exar Kun and Ula Keldroma.
He did? Do we see art of a basilisk in Tales of the Jedi? I can't remember.
Yeah.
It's been like 10 years since I read it.
Yes, we do.
That's so cool. I know that there's a ton of it in the KOTOR comic.
Yes, there are lots of basilisks in the KOTOR comic.
Oh, such beautiful art of basilisks just tearing apart starfighters.
Oh, I appreciate those comics because we finally get to see like space combat in the Old Republic era
Yeah, I agree. And
expanded a bit more.
yeah, and it's beautifully done too.
Mhm.
Like the art in that series is definitely something.
Jan Duursema is definitely one of my favorite artists from Dark Horse. She just did a phenomenal job with the Old Republic comics, the Republic comics, Empire comics, Purge comics. Every project she worked on, she just made it brilliant.
Yeah, I agree. I'm very happy that they have the comics back now.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so after, I guess we're kind of like flirting around the edges of the Mandalorian Wars. I guess we should probably start with the new Sith War though, because I don't want my boy Edgar to not get love. And Mandalore the Indomitable was a pretty big badass.
Anyway. They did a lot of extinctions during that time period too.
Wait, did Tad, do you not like Mandalore the Indomitable?
I mean, he's like he's not my favorite Mandalore, particularly because Ulick bested him pretty easily, and then he was pretty much Ulick's slave, for better or worse term, for the rest of the war, and that kind of drove the Mandalorians to ruin. And
They did fuck him up, that's for sure.
yeah,
So what do you think about, because he goes to rescue Ulick when Ulick gets captured? Isn't he one of the reasons? Like, he runs to Exar and then tells Exar that he got captured. And then
Right.
isn't he part of the team that is sent to rescue him?
yeah, but after that he's sent to Onderon, where he gets his butt kicked by the Beast Riders, and then he gets eaten by one of the beasts on Duxon.
It's kind of an inglorious way for Mandalore to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we got Mandalore the Ultimate out of it, who was a much superior Mandalore in my opinion. He at least accomplished stuff.
And he dueled Revan and actually hung with him.
He did.
Mandalore the Ultimate is the one that started the Neo Crusaders, right?
Yes. And then Cassius Fett kind of headed that for him.
Good old Cassius Fett. The genocidal maniac.
And he's the one that, we start getting humans and other species into the Mandalorian culture instead of just being a solely Tong-based organization.
Yeah.
So, speaking of that, I've heard some people say, now I don't know enough to decide one way or the other, I just think it's a cool theory, but they mentioned that Mandalore the Ultimate could have been one of the last actual Tongs.
He is confirmed to be a Tong.
He is.
Mhm.
That's awesome.
The last Tong we read about is he doesn't have a name, but he ends up possessing Mandalore's mask at some point, and Canderous Ordo gets it from him before he becomes the new Mandalore.
Were there any
there's
like
still
Tong Mandalores after that, or was that the last one?
We don't get any more mention of Tong Mandalores after him.
Is it confirmed he's the last, or is it kind of just not mentioned?
It's not mentioned, so we can kind of assume so.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of probably like the Sith species where they dwindled out over time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd
I
imagine.
mean, it makes sense, especially considering that they were pretty much near extinct when they had to leave Coruscant in the first place.
Well, the Sith actually survived on Tund for a while until Roker Gepta blew it up.
Yeah, that's true. But that's kind of what I mean. Like, they trickled out. Like, it wasn't like a full blown extinction. It's like you see less and less slowly over time.
Yeah.
Things just keep happening. I guess if Mandalore the Ultimate was confirmed to be one, then we can assume that a lot of them probably died in orbit around Malachor.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah,
When the
Malachor.
mass shadow generator is detonated, most
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah,
sure.
I know Revan destroyed a lot of the clans there, or a lot of their
Mhm.
forces at least.
Hmm.
Do we know what happened to Cassius Fett? I can't remember if we ever see him actually die or anything.
I didn't
didn't-
find anything about him dying. So.
I didn't finish the second series of KOTOR comics. I finished the first series that completes Zane's story. I didn't start I think the second series is War or something like that. I can't remember, but I have not started that series yet, so I'm unsure if Cassius appears in that series.
And it's been so long since I've read it, I can't say myself either. But But it's crazy that. So, what do you think about? Some people are not fans of, like the whole idea that there has to be like an ancestor. Like there's like a Solo in the past, or a Fett in the past, or a Skywalker in the past, or whatever it is, or in the future.
Mhm.
But I honestly think that kind of works for the Mandalorians because it's kind of an integral part of their culture, isn't it? Like familial lines and the clans.
It's the exact opposite, actually. There's a saying in Mandoa that goes "Alit Orishia Tal Din," which means family is more than blood.
That's
And
cool.
there's a common practice called the rite of Gai Balmanda, where people will tend to adopt children that don't have their own parents or just don't get on with their parents very well into their clan. Like, for example, Jango Fett, when he was orphaned on Concord Dawn, Jaster Real took him in as part of his clan and named him as his son.
That is cool how they're open like that.
And you can
And
do the same with brothers too. Like, you know how like if you have like a really good friend, you're like, "Oh, he's my brother," or "No, she's my sister," but you're not actually related. They do the same thing.
all right, yeah, that makes sense.
It doesn't
And
matter what species. Like you can get Zabraks as Mandalorians as well.
well,
Yeah.
I knew that it didn't matter the species, but
Mhm.
and like I knew that they kind of let anybody come in,
Yeah,
but I
there were
didn't
Wookiee
realize.
Mandalorians.
Yeah, there's Mandalorians of all kinds.
hmm
I just didn't realize that the clan itself wasn't that important. I know that they're divided into clans.
The clan is important. Bloodlines are not important.
It's interesting. So it's more like you're like,
Like honor to the to the clan itself.
Yeah.
yeah,
You could think of the
The
clan
cl-
as like less of a family and more of like almost like a tribe almost. If
or a
that makes
military
sense.
unit.
Yeah, something like that.
yeah.
Like it's
Yeah,
not as
right.
really strictly a family thing, it's just like a group of people almost.
And
But
that's where we get into a lot of the Celtic influence in the
yeah.
Mandalorian culture.
Absolutely, yeah.
I know nothing about Celtic culture, so do you mind kind of elucidating on that a little bit?
As somebody who is ethnically Scottish, I am ashamed to say that I don't know much about it either, but I do know that they have clans which make up, it's basically like little familial communities. I'm not so much sure about how modern Scotland works.
Yeah. Well, you have like the different distinctions of the clans in Scotland. So you go like the Highlands and the Lowlands. So this is where I did live in Scotland for a year and being also part Scottish too.
Oh, that's brilliant.
But they were separated and like there was the different uprisings and it was after Queen Elizabeth I died that like the Scottish heirs came onto the throne, but the English didn't like it, so they basically pushed them out. There were several uprisings that led them to like try to get them back on the throne. And the last one was in 1745. If you guys are familiar, there's I think it's on Netflix. The Outlander series is about all this kind of
Seen
stuff.
that.
Ever watch it? It's pretty interesting in terms of like history and then the clans itself. So like they were very divided, and then the battle at Culloden in 1746, like the Scottish were just wiped out, and after that, the English basically just said anyone caught wearing a kilt, brandishing a sword, like you're gonna be killed or sent to the United States, basically. So,
Did
and, like
that
Scottish culture right after that. So like, kind of see this a little bit with like how they like the Empire tries to take them down and like or even ones when they like have to remove their armor, they're not allowed to wear it in like Sundari and anything anymore. So it's like reminiscent of stripping them of the kilt, like the actual like like the knitted meaning of the clans is the kilt itself.
So I know that the Mandalorians definitely had moments where they were scattered, like after the Mandalorian Wars when Mandalore the Ultimate and so many of their forces got killed at Malachor. They were kind of scattered for a long time until Canderous brought them back together.
Mhm.
Exactly.
So, are there any moments in Star Wars history that kind of mirror that? Like, was Mandalorian culture ever like outlawed? Do you know what I mean?
Uh,
I kind of do it in my story, but that doesn't count.
Yeah, that's fair.
what we get from the old Marvel comics is a sense that it wasn't so much outlawed, whereas the Mandalorian people were enslaved to mine Beskar. And in the comics, you see the only people who have Mandalorian iron armor is Fen Shaisa and Toby Dalla. The rest are all wearing like regular clothes and helmets and stuff like that, where because the Empire took their armor from them.
Yeah, that makes sense. That was gonna be when I figured that it happened. Was during the period of the Empire. And I mean, we're kind of skipping. We could probably be here all night talking about Mandalorian history. I know we're skipping over a lot. We're kind of bouncing around, but since we're talking about it, I know that there is like the Imperial era in history is kind of like contradictory in a way. A lot, both because we have this depiction of Mandalore from things like the comics, and then the Clone Wars series. And I know some people later on kind of like justified it as saying that there was a schism in the Mandalorians around that time. There's like the faction that leads the group that we see in the Clone Wars show, and that the more traditional Mandalorians are in another area of the planet. What do you think about that?
I mean, I've stated in my videos on my other channel about why TCW doesn't fit in with Legends, and I'm actually of a different opinion than when I was first making those videos 5 or 6 years ago. I think I still think TCW doesn't fit within the expanded universe, but I think Legends itself is its own space where you can kind of mash things together and headcanon them as you will. I'm not really a fan of how the Mandalorians are depicted being what was called a Fandalorian back in the day, back when the Karen Travis books were being written still. But yeah, the depiction of the Mandalorians in the show doesn't really go along with the explanation given. Like, for example, Mandalore is in the show is shown as this irradiated wasteland, where in the books it's described as this multi-biome Earth-like planet where there's jungles, forests, grasslands, deserts, oceans, Arctic zones. And unless that's the planet is split in half, completely at the international date line, and the only time we see it in the show is seeing the irradiated half of it, it kind of takes me out of that explanation. And I understand it's a janky explanation. That's how they make it work, but I'm not a fan of it.
Yeah, I have to agree with you on that. I'm with you that Legends is a huge place and you can tell all kinds of stories, and that there is like a certain amount of leeway that you have to allow for headcanon. But I personally go with the idea that the Clone Wars is like an ISB propaganda film. And so that the stuff we see is highly exaggerated because it's kind of like theater, like as Imperial propaganda. And in my head, Mandalore is that multi-biome. It's the same thing with Dathomir too, because it's just cooler that way. When you have more nuance and like, you can have like Mandalorians that are training in the Arctic and stuff. You don't, it's just not as bland.
Well, Star Wars falls into the trope of its own of its own movies where each planet is one whole single biome.
Yes, I agree. That's definitely one of those things that it struggles with. It's like we have to have the snow planet, the swamp planet, the desert planet. But
Right.
they did a good job in the expanded universe, I think, of kind of breaking away from that when they could. Like they gave us places like Hanagar that has like a unique environment because it's been poisoned, and places like Mandalore that have multi-biomes and things like that. So getting back to Mandalorians though, I know, and like we're skipping ahead again, but I'm trying to hit like areas that maybe aren't as often discussed, and I know that we see Mandalorians in the Star Wars Legacy series, which is 137 years after the Battle of Yavin, I think.
Hmm.
So I don't know anything about that. I know they look awesome because the Beskar gum from them is like amazing. But what can you tell us about the way they're structured then? Like, has there been any changes or anything like that?
They really only appear in one comic. Um, they're not explored as much as they can be in the Legacy comics. Like, we see the current Mandalore getting murdered, and then we kind of there's like nothing really after that. It kind of focuses more on Darth Krayt in the One Sith and Cade's journey.
Which is good stuff, but it would have been nice to get some answers. At least we know that they have a Mandalore by then still.
Yeah,
So they must be still holding to the Rezolnare. Would you like to explain what that is? I'm sure I'm pronouncing it wrong.
I thought
I
it
know
was like
that
Rizalnare or something.
it is Rezolnare. At least
Yeah.
that's how it's pronounced in the SWOTOR game.
Rezolnare.
Yeah. So that is basically just the code of ethics that Mandalorians live by, and it's basically wear the armor, speak the language, contribute to the clan, um, protect your family. Why am I
Language.
forgetting? Yep, speak the language. I thought I said that
Then-
one already.
Yeah, you did. You said that one already. So it's
Educate.
basically like their law, like their code of ethics.
It's not really a law. It's more of like just guidelines. Just quote
Tenets.
Pirates of the Caribbean. Yeah.
All
Yeah,
right.
the pirate code.
And I guess because it's flexible, that's why you get these different groups of Mandalorians, right? We should probably talk about that because I know there's a lot of different sub factions. Like there's the Scarada group, and there's Death Watch.
Well, Scarada is just a clan.
Oh,
It's not really its own Mandalorian group. Yeah.
well, didn't he? I know he was the guy that ended up training the clone troopers, right? Him and Django and a few others.
Through like 100 of them, though.
Yeah. When Django was contracted to be the prime clone, he chose 150 training sergeants to, help train the clones. 75 of them were Mandalorians, and Cal Scarada was one of them. He trained Omega Squad.
And they were ARC troopers, right?
No, Omega Squad were regular clone commandos. He did, however, his first trainees, which he actually adopted by the right of Guy Balmanda, were these 12 Null class ARC troopers, and they're called that because they didn't quite meet specifications because they were too independent, too unpredictable, and he saved them from the Kaminoans, basically killing them because they were an inferior product to them.
That's pretty
And-
cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I was
That
going
was
to say.
gonna lead. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh no, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was going to say, but yeah, so 6 of them ended up surviving, and he adopted them.
And that was kind of going to be my next question was I know that the clones kind of adopted some of the Mandalorian traditions and that there was like a little bit of bleed over. But like
It depends on who
important-
their training sergeant was.
how important would you say that Mandalorian teachings were to the overall success of the clone army?
Well, the clone army itself, when you look at it from the perspective of Jango, you could easily see it as Jango's revenge for the Battle of Galadran, where a majority of the true Mandalorians were murdered by Jedi under Count Dooku after the Death Watch framed them for killing unarmed civilians. Yeah. So I see a million Django's exterminating the Jedi as his like personal like last laugh of haha, you destroyed my Mandalorians, I destroy, your Jedi.
It is like Django to do some devious long-term stuff like that to get back at him
Yeah.
too.
It's such a powerful scene too. Like like kills them with his bare hands. Like he does have a rock at one point, but like as he's saying like, you know, like weird lines like you killed them, and he's like killing a Jedi, and then just like we're all dead.
Hmm.
Dooku immediately is just like, I regret what we did here today.
Yeah, that was actually one of the underlying reasons why he left the Jedi Order.
Exactly. And Kamani Vosa was there as well.
Mm-hmm.
So that helped her also turn to the dark side.
Yep.
So I know that you mentioned that like most of the true Mandalorians were killed by these Jedi. Can you explain the difference between like say the true Mandalorians and the Death Watch and like the
Yeah.
Neo Crusaders?
Well, so you have your basic Mandalorians. Well, so going back to before we get to the Mandalorian Civil War, you had the regular Mandalorian Crusaders, which were these were guys that they recruited off the streets, basically gave them a couple guns, some armor, and said, "Hey, go fight the Republic." Then you had the Neo Crusaders, which were a lot more organized. They had uniforms, they had a rank structure, and they were kind of like the Imperial stormtroopers, so to say, of Mandalore the Ultimate. So you had like the Mandalorian Crusaders, who were like the Imperial army, and then you had the Neo Crusaders, who were like the stormtroopers.
And the Neo Crusaders are the ones that we see in KOTOR.
Yes, the brightly colored ones. They either come in blue, red, or yellow. Um,
And that denotes rank, right? Like red is
Yeah.
a rally master. I think that's the one I know.
yeah, blue is just like your standard Neo Crusader. Then red is the Rally Master, and then yellow is the Field Marshal. I forget what the term for it in Mandoa is off the top of my head, but
And then after the Neo Crusaders, that's when you start to get things like the true Mandalorians.
yeah. So
They're-
well,
Later. They're much later.
yeah, very later, and they
Yeah.
only really come about when there's a schism with the Mandalorians. So basically, around 60 years before the Battle of Yavin, the Mandalorians are they kind of fell from grace from what they were during the Old Republic era, where they were basically just bullies. They were pirates. They were raiders. They wouldn't any shipping that came down the Hydian, they would go and raid immediately. Jaster Muriel comes along. He's this Mandalorian, and he's well liked. He ends up becoming Mandalore because at that point in time, being Mandalore is more of a popularity contest than it is actually being like like a crowned hereditary leader or a
A meritocracy.
yeah, pretty much, yeah. So he basically says, all right, so why don't we get our crap together here? Let's stop raiding all the shipping coming in, and why don't we, I know we're all bored here, there hasn't been a conflict. Why don't you sell yourselves as mercenaries and, be honorable about it? You don't have to go around and bully these people for no reason. And a lot of people... I'm sorry, go ahead.
When he created the Super Commando Codex, and that's what really was like the inspiration of. And he drew from the Resonare as well.
Yeah, precisely. There were some who preferred bullying neighboring systems and doing piracy, though, and that was Tor Vizsla, who created the Death Watch, which is like a splinter group. And he claimed that he wanted to bring the Mandalorians back to the glory of they were in the days of Mandalore the Ultimate, but it was really just a front for his criminal activity. And that kind of sparked the Mandalorian Civil War, which goes on for like 20 years.
So the Mandalorian Civil War was basically people that were trying to hold to and update the Resonare, and then basically just a straight thug.
Yeah, precisely.
Fair enough. So what you said that he created the Super Commando Codex. Can you explain a little more what that is?
Yeah, it's basically just the Resonare, but modernized. It's basically saying like, hey, you can be a farmer if you want. You can be a metal worker. You can be, um, a mercenary if you want. But just adhere to the code and just basically just don't be awful.
So it has, moral teachings to it.
Hmm.
It's kind of, isn't that like there's real world parallels to that in some East Asian philosophies. I think especially like Confucianism, where it's like it doesn't really matter what you're doing as long as you do it as good as you possibly can.
Confucianism is mostly focused on like obedience, though, like obeying like the government, obeying like the family head, stuff like that. But I think there are some comparisons being made, especially with like the kind of like family clan structure at times.
So we should, just because we're probably in the second half of the stream now, we should probably talk about our boy Boba Fett since he's all over the place right now. He would eventually. What's up?
Too. Gotta talk Django first before you talk Boba.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, we've kind of been talking about Django with him training the clone troopers and stuff.
Mhm.
Sure.
He definitely. I wish that he had put up a little bit more of a fight in the Geonosis arena.
Oh,
Don't we all?
Like he hangs with Obi-Wan just fine.
Right.
Like you figure that he would be able to. I mean, I get it. Like he's probably not gonna make it, but still, he could have put up at least some kind of a fight. Like force Mace to do some kind of force trickery
yeah.
in order to win it. Like blow
He
up his
did kind of go out like a punk, but I love Mace Windu too, so it's like I'm kind of conflicted.
Yeah, that's true. It's like a lose-lose and a win-win at once.
Right.
But
I just wanted to mention like that moment where, like how he becomes with Jaster, but we kind of forgot about that he has a sister. She does slightly come back later on in Karen Travis' story, but
Mhm.
she doesn't really ever have much of a story, which I think is too bad. Could have got some like really cool like female characters coming from her line or something.
I think Karen had plans with her because she does come back in Order 66. They spring so basically Arla Fett, who's Jango Fett's sister, when his parents are murdered, she's taken by the Death Watch. They do terrible, awful things to her, and she ends up going into a psych ward for a while. And when when Clan Scarada are going around and trying to, at this point, they've basically gone AWOL from the Republic, and they're trying to come up with a cure for the clone's accelerated aging. That's when they discover that, hey, Arla is still alive. She has some of Jango's DNA, and she ends up later becoming part of Clan Scarada. And I Karen Travis had like two more books written in the Imperial Commando series. Well, not written, but planning to be written. And I'm hoping that, hope that posthumously that she had some sort of redemption arc in there or some sort of focus. Because I was really interested in learning more about her character.
So the chat, our friend Mr. J. Marley in the chat says that Django's sister marrying Bardan Jusik was apparently on the docket for Imperial Commando 2.
Oh, really?
See, he fixes her mind, right? Oh, that's kind of sweet.
Imperial Commando is one of those things that I really, really wanted.
I think there's a huge age gap though there, because isn't Barden like 20 something and she's in her 40s by that time?
Oh man. Well, I mean, my great grandmother was like 15 years older than my great grandfather.
Well, fair enough, but I don't know.
As long as they're adults, I suppose.
Yeah, I guess.
It's not as weird as Anakin and Padme, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Moving on.
Yeah, so Django kind of went out. So there's a whole lot to him though, because we already talked about how he kind of got his revenge with the clone army and things like that. But there's a whole backstory that gets covered in the Bounty Hunter video game, and I know a couple other places where he actually meets Dooku and gets involved with him in the first place. Did you guys ever play that game?
Yeah.
It's an oldie at this point.
It never
But
came out on PC.
that game was great, man.
I
That was
rebought the they remade it or ported it for PlayStation 4.
They did.
Yes, they did.
Oh
I think it's
man,
like $10 on PSN.
I would totally have bought that too. That's worth it.
Yeah, well, next time you're on PSN, just look it up. It's $10.
Unfortunately, I no longer have any consoles. I have become a PC elitist.
Oh, it's hard to get consoles
The only way
anyway.
to live. Well, it's hard to get graphics cards too.
Yeah.
But I do have it on Steam. I did replay it recently, and it's just like Django is so no nonsense in that in that game. Like right in the beginning when he first gets the contract, I can't remember the planet that he goes to off the top of my head, but he goes up to talk to the bartender and just immediately draws on him. He's just like, "All right, well, tell me where I need to go, or I kill you." I miss those kinds of Mandalorians. You know, that's the kind of thing that we had from Boba Fett as well. Especially like I'm kind of moving from Django, but Boba has such a crazy journey that we talked about last time in Legends, and I guess we won't necessarily have to talk about the whole thing, but he does eventually end up coming to the Rezolnare, and he becomes Mandalore himself.
Well, even when he's Mandalore, he's still quite a newbie to the Mandalorian culture. It's stated in Legacy of the Force in one of his private thoughts. He's reminding himself to program his his in-helmet HUD translator for Mondoa because he can't really understand what's going on during the meeting of the clans.
Is
Yeah,
he
that's funny.
the worst Mandalore ever for not being able to speak Mandoa?
No, I still maintain that Mandalore the Indomitable was the worst Mandalore ever.
That's very fair. I mean, Boba did fight off the Vong by himself.
Well, I mean,
not
he had
by-
the
not by
Mandalorian
himself.
protectors, but
Yeah. I mean, not by
Like
himself.
Mandalore
But
by itself.
yeah, Mandalore was the only planet to be able that successfully repelled them alone. They did that
successfully is a.
Thing and seat against the the Republic for a while as well.
Mhm.
Yeah, they
so-
were. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was gonna say successfully is a bit of a stretch because a lot of
But-
Mandalore's economy was devastated and their farmlands were kind of irradiated, and a lot of Mandalorians died during the battle.
A lot. Don't they? They go back there later. I can't. I think it's in Legacy of the Force, but and like they can like sense the echoes in the Force still, like the pained echoes from the battle. But didn't that fight also expose like huge loads of Beskar?
Yeah, and that's how they got their commerce. If it wasn't for the Vong, they wouldn't be able to, get their ships going on.
Yeah,
Right.
isn't it? It's kind of implied that they became like a really heavy industrial base after that, isn't it?
Yeah, they basically regain their economy after one of Boba's friends finds at the Beskar deposit in his backyard, essentially. And they get that's where the complex politics of the Legacy of the Force series comes into play, where they enter into like a defense contract with the Verpine, and there's a whole like debacle going on with Mercana, and that they get sucked into the Second Galactic Civil War somehow, but it's just a mess.
Yeah, that Legacy. I will say, Legacy of the Force has a special place in my heart because it was the first arc that I bought as it was coming out. But yeah, it's a bit confusing sometimes. That's for sure.
The astropolitical nature of the books is complex, and you have to like really like dig into like deep into the lore to actually understand most of it.
Yeah, which is understandable considering like how many moving pieces there were in that conflict. Like you said, the
Mhm.
Mandalorians got sucked into it. Corellia was acting as an independent party for a long time before they, started that whole rebellion. Hapes
Mhm.
gets dragged into it.
Lumaya was there. Don't forget her.
Yeah, Dark Lady of the Sith. We're gonna have to do an episode on her at some point.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, who is your favorite Mandalorian? Doesn't necessarily have to be Mandalore, but just Mandalorian in general.
Uh, I mean, Django's usually a close first.
Django is pretty badass. I mean, anybody who can beat a Jedi to death with a rock is
I
definitely.
do love Cal Skirata because he was my introduction into the Mandalorian culture through reading um the Republic Commando novels. But
All the Commando books are really good. They're very, very loved by people.
Hmm.
I think
yeah,
for me, it's probably Canderous. I love
I like
Canderous.
Anders is pretty cool.
Yeah, I love the story that he tells about them going up against the Vong in like 4,000 BBY. What about you, Kyle? What's your favorite Mandalorian?
I have to second the thing about Django because Django vibes.
I wonder how many people have Django as their favorite Mandalorian. I bet you it's a
I'd
lot.
imagine a lot of the Legends fans in general. Like
Yeah,
the ones that come to mind for me would be like him and Cal Skirata, and I'd say that's gonna be like the two like most popular ones for like at least like heavy duty Legends fans. I think
the
Boba Fett would
two
be like the
most
more popular one with like people who aren't as into it though.
are they the two most prominent Mandalorians? Like in terms of the material that they're given? I know because the Republic Commando books pretty much focus on Skirata like a lot. And there's a decent amount of them. And I
Uh,
know Django is in the comics like crazy.
hmm
I'd imagine along with Boba Fett, of course.
Yeah, but like Boba, he has a decent amount of stuff, but how many people do you think would actually put him as their favorite Mandalorian? Some people for
A
sure.
lot of people who don't know the others.
That's a fair point.
Like a lot of the like casual fans, people who are like mainly into like the Disney stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Or like folks that haven't read the expanded universe. Mandalore the
Mhm.
Ultimate's pretty awesome too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love Neo Crusaders. I think they're like my favorite subgroup. I just love their armor. How they have that
It
like
is.
coif.
Yeah, it is pretty cool. I've seen some people attempt to make it in the Mandalorian Mercs costume club, with varying degrees of success. But it's always cool when you see somebody try to make a Neo Crusader.
Yeah, right. It does have that unique look. I've seen a couple of cosplays of them too, and it's always like close but not quite there.
hmm
They have to figure out a way to make a coif that doesn't like wrinkle up. You know what I
I've
mean?
I've seen some people use like shaping foam.
So you made your own Beskar Gom, right?
Yeah, well, I didn't make the plates. I ordered the plates. Somebody else made them. I don't have the capacity in my home to make to cast plastic for my own plates, but I painted them. I did all the soft parts myself.
That's
Um,
awesome.
yeah, actually, on my Patreon that I do for the Mandalore channel, I will do like cosplay, sort of not really tutorials. I mostly just film me like for example, last summer I built some DC-17 sidearm blasters. Um,
Damn, that's awesome.
Yeah.
yeah, so I went through and documented me sanding it and um, using
Is
my
that
Dremel to cut off all the extra bits and then painting it and weathering it.
that definitely I know that there is like a very passionate sub community that's really into stuff like that.
hmm
I would be so lost if it came to watching that type of thing. I'll have to check out your Patreon so that I can learn how.
Yeah. Just I find just talking to people within the Mandalorian Mercs or the Rebel Legion or the 501st Legion helps tremendously because they can give you pointers.
Yeah, that's fair. I know the 501st guys, I've kind of been chatting with them a little bit, and they're really into it. They have some impressive pieces.
Oh yeah. And to get into the 501st, they're very stringent. If any detail of your armor is off, they won't accept you.
Yeah,
It
those
has to
guys are nuts.
a
Yeah.
movie replica, basically.
hmm
Which is the way to go. Basically, it has to actually be the armor.
Pretty much. You have to study film stills for like days and days.
That's cool though. You gotta admire the dedication. And I mean, it looks awesome.
Thank you. I
Yeah.
try.
Yeah, you succeeded, sir. But yeah, I think we're kind of winding down. We've been talking for almost an hour now. Tad, do you have any like final thoughts or anything on Mandalorians that you'd like to talk about?
I just wanted to
Um,
ask him if he could share some about Mandalore the Avenger.
I've
So-
never heard of Mandalore the Avenger.
Neither have
That's so Mandalore the Avenger is Shea Vizsla from the SWTOR games, and I've never played the SWTOR games. That is the area, that is my area of least expertise because yeah, I just
She does some
MMOs.
cool stuff, but she did attack Alderaan at one point with the Sith Empire, so I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah,
She
I
ha-
know
she experiences her own redemption arc within the game because she does start out working with the Sith, but then she ends up working with the Eternal Alliance and the Republic.
See, that's what
So-
I did play that game, and I really, but I've only done the base class stories. I've never done the expansions, and I know she's very big in the expansions.
Yeah, there's a whole like other Mandalorian Civil War going on in the expansions too, which is
Wait,
very
really?
interesting. Yeah, yeah. Basically, some Mandalorians like they break off, and
Clan
I'm
Rook.
yeah, or the hidden chain too.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, she investigates that, right? I think.
yeah. Again, this is my area of least expertise, and the only parts I know about it are from what I've read from Wikipedia, which I don't trust at all.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's for sure. Well, still, that's crazy. I didn't even know that there was a Civil War then. I'm gonna have to, man, it's like, we needed, like we have like the New Essential Atlas, New Essential Guide to Warfare. Like, we needed a New Essential Guide to the Old Republic. Just
Yeah.
to like dive in deep into this kind of stuff.
I'm really hoping that they do publish like another sort of like Old Republic because they have the Old Republic Encyclopedia, but that came out in like 2011 when the game was first starting.
Yeah,
And
there's
it's
been so
expanded
much.
exactly. So
Yeah.
my hopes are in the future that we could get something like that once the game is sort of at an ending point because eventually it has to end.
Yeah,
Eventually.
nothing lasts forever. I know that there's the Journal of Nostroll as well, but it's like $200 a copy because it was like a limited release thing.
I have them both saved on my thrift books wish list whenever it comes up.
One
And
of
I'm
these
like,
days.
I don't have $300 today, so I'll wait till next time.
Yeah, right. It's crazy how expensive they get. I want to read it really bad, but
hmm
like you said, one day it'll pop up.
Yeah,
But all
possibly.
right, I think we'll go ahead and wind it down. Like I said, we've been talking about an hour now. Tad, thank you very much for joining us. This was a lot of fun, and
Yeah.
I legitimately learned a lot about Mandalorians.
Same.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, for sure. We hope to have you back, man. And anybody watching, go check out Tad's channel. It's Manda-LORE with lore all uppercase. He's got great
A
videos
dash in
there.
between Manda and Lore. Manda dash Lore.
You'll recognize the orange armor. Look
Yeah.
for the orange and red Mandalorian. He's got great videos where he dives in deep, and yeah, hopefully we have him back. And this was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But all right, guys, we'll catch you next time. May the force be with you all, and yeah, we'll talk to you.
Should I end it?
Yes, please.